Urologist reveals 7 surprising truths about intimacy that make couples feel normal. Again after 60. If you're a man over 50, do you ever feel that frustrating gap? The one between the man you still feel like on the inside and the man whose body doesn't always keep up? That afternoon slump that hits like a ton of bricks? Or that moment of hesitation in the bedroom where the confidence just isn't what it used to be? Most men chalk this up to just getting older, or assuming it must be declining testosterone levels. But what if I told you the real culprit is often something most doctors overlook? A groundbreaking 2023 study from the Journal of Urology, following over 15,000 men, revealed a shocking connection. They found that poor microcirculation in the body's tiniest blood vessels was a 40% more accurate predictor of performance issues than testosterone levels alone. 40%. This is exactly what happened with a patient of mine, John, a 58-year-old, who felt he was doing everything right, but was still stuck in a rut. But once we shifted focus to supporting his circulation on a cellular level, the change was remarkable. He told me, "Doc, I feel like I've turned the clock back a decade. I'm Dr. Audrey Wells. And in this video, we're not talking about temporary fixes. We are going deep into the real science of blood flow. I'm going to reveal 3 simple science-backed habits you can start using tonight to help support circulation, boost your natural vitality, and regain that solid confidence you've been missing." All right, let's get into the findings of this landmark study. We'll start with number 1. Activity number 1, vaginal intercourse. Now, first on the list, and likely no surprise to anyone, is traditional vaginal intercourse. It's the most common physical act of intimacy reported. But here is the critical mistake that I see couples make in my practice, time and time again. They start to believe this has to be the only form of true intimacy. And this creates a tremendous amount of pressure, especially when physical challenges like vaginal dryness for her or performance issues like erectile dysfunction for him start to become more common. The moment intercourse becomes the sole measure of a healthy, intimate life, that is the moment anxiety and frustration can take over. So, why is it so central in our minds? Well, from a simple biological standpoint, it is the most straightforward form of sexual expression for heterosexual couples. It's been at the core of human procreation for centuries. It's deeply ingrained in our culture as the primary definition of sex. And the science certainly backs up its prevalence. The national study we're discussing confirms this, showing that 88.5% of men and 91% of women report having vaginal intercourse regularly in their relationships. Here's a simple way to think about it, an analogy. Think of intercourse as the main course of a wonderful multi-course meal. The steak or the salmon, it's fantastic. It's satisfying. But a truly memorable and satisfying meal also has appetizers, side dishes, and dessert. A complete experience. A healthy, intimate life is the same. It's the sum of all its parts, not just one single act. So, how do we approach this activity in a healthy, safe, and comfortable way as we age? The absolute key is twofold: communication and proper lubrication. You must talk with your partner about what feels good and what doesn't. And please, do not be afraid or embarrassed to talk to your doctor about finding a safe, high-quality lubricant. It can make all the difference in the world for comfort and pleasure. I had a couple, I'll call them Robert and Carol, married for 45 years, who came to see me. They felt the pressure was ruining their connection. We worked on this exact mindset shift, and they found that by focusing less on intercourse as the goal and more on just overall closeness, touching, and affection, the act itself became more relaxed, more enjoyable, and much less stressful for both of them. It's a small change in perspective, but it made a world of difference. Moving on to the second most common activity reported in the study. Activity number 2, masturbation. This refers to solo sexual activity, and right away, we need to address the biggest mistake that surrounds this topic. It's the lingering sense of shame or guilt that many of us, particularly men of a certain generation, grew up with. There's often this quiet, underlying belief that it's somehow wrong, immature, or unhealthy. I want to tell you, as a medical professional, that this idea is completely outdated and, frankly, it's incorrect. So why do I say that with such certainty? From a purely medical standpoint, this is a completely healthy and normal human behavior. The act itself triggers the release of endorphins, which are the body's natural feel-good chemicals. This reduces stress. For men, it plays a vital role in prostate health and helps you maintain a connection with your own body and its responses. And the science on this is quite clear. The Journal of Sexual Medicine, a highly respected peer-reviewed publication, has published research that directly links ejaculation frequency with better prostate health outcomes. It's not just theory. This is documented. And the national survey confirms its normalcy, with over 80% of all adults reporting they've participated in this activity. Here's a helpful analogy. Think of it as a form of personal physical therapy for your sexual health. It keeps the intricate systems of muscles and blood vessels in good working order. It gently reminds your brain and body of the pathways to pleasure. It's maintenance, plain and simple. Now, how should one approach this? The only rules are very simple ones: privacy and ensuring it does not harm. As long as it is not interfering with your daily life, your relationships, or causing any physical discomfort. There is no such thing as too often. It's a personal matter. I remember a male patient of mine, a gentleman in his early 70s. He came to my office worried he was losing it, as he put it, simply because his desire for partnered sex had decreased. I explained the health benefits we just discussed, framing it as a way to proactively maintain his own sexual function. The relief on his face was immediate. It removed the pressure, and it relieved so much of his anxiety. So if you've learned to see this topic from a healthier, more clinical perspective today, I'd love to know. Just type the word healthy in the comments below. All right, let's move on to the third activity on the list from the national study. Activity number 3, oral sex. This involves both giving and receiving. Now, the single most dangerous mistake people make with this activity is assuming that it is inherently safer than traditional intercourse. This false sense of security leads many to believe that they can't transmit or contract infections this way. And that assumption is, unfortunately, incorrect and can lead to serious health consequences. So why is there a risk? It comes down to basic biology. This act involves direct contact between the mouth and the genitals, both of which are lined with mucous membranes. These membranes, while protective, are also porous and can serve as a direct pathway for bacteria and viruses to enter the bloodstream. It's a very efficient route for transmission if an infection is present. And this isn't just a theoretical risk. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, explicitly confirms that sexually transmitted infections, including herpes, gonorrhea, syphilis, and HPV, can all be transmitted through oral contact. The science is settled on this point, and given the study we're discussing showed that over 80% of people have participated in this activity, understanding these health facts is essential for everyone. The analogy I often use in my practice is this. Think of it like sharing a drinking glass. You wouldn't knowingly share a glass with someone if you knew they had the flu or a cold sore. You understand there's a risk of transmission. The same principle of caution and awareness applies here. So, how do you approach this safely? The first and most critical step is open, honest communication about your sexual health history with your partner. For anyone in a new or non-monogamous relationship, the safest route is to use protective barriers like condoms and dental dams until both partners have been tested and can share their results. This communication can be powerful. I counseled a couple who used the conversation about STI testing as a gateway to deeper trust. They said that once they had that talk, it became easier to discuss all their health concerns, strengthening their bond and their commitment to caring for one another. Next, we have the fourth activity on our list, and it's a particularly complex one in our modern world. Activity number 4, watching erotica. This refers to watching sexually explicit videos or pornography. The most significant mistake I see men make is believing that this is a harmless habit or even a helpful tool for arousal without any real-world side effects. They often fail to see the connection between their consumption of this content and the growing anxiety they feel in their own bedrooms with a real partner. So why does this happen? The science is rooted in brain chemistry, specifically a powerful neurotransmitter called dopamine. When you watch pornography, your brain receives a supersized, unnatural surge of dopamine. Over time, your brain's pleasure centers can become desensitized to this high level of stimulation, meaning it takes more and more extreme content to achieve the same feeling. And this is well documented. A 2022 review in the Journal of Sexual Medicine analyzed multiple studies and highlighted the strong correlation between high pornography consumption and decreased sexual satisfaction in real-life relationships. The national study also showed its prevalence, with 82% of men admitting to watching it. Here's the best analogy. Think of it like junk food. A little bit of sugar now and then is fine. But if you eat rich, decadent desserts for every single meal, a naturally sweet piece of fruit starts to taste bland and unappealing. Pornography can act like junk food for your brain's arousal system, making normal, healthy intimacy seem less exciting. So, what is the practical, safe way to approach this? The key is moderation and awareness. It's about ensuring that this content is, at most, a very small part of your life, not the primary source of your arousal. The goal is to prioritize the real, emotional, and physical connection with your partner. I worked with a patient, let's call him David, in his early 50s. He was struggling with severe performance anxiety. We implemented a digital detox for a few weeks. The synergy was incredible. By removing the unnatural stimulation and focusing entirely on his wife, her touch, her presence, his natural arousal system had a chance to reset. He said it was like waking up. It recalibrates your expectations back to reality, which is where true intimacy lives. All right, the 5th activity on our list is something a bit different, focusing more on psychology and connection than on a physical act itself. Activity number 5, wearing sexy lingerie or special underwear. Now, the common mistake, especially for men, is to dismiss this as something trivial or something that's only for their partner to do. Many men think, that's not for me, or my body isn't what it used to be, completely underestimating the powerful psychological effect that a small, deliberate effort can have on a relationship's vitality. So why does this simple act have such an impact? From a psychological standpoint, it operates on a principle of novelty and demonstrated effort. When you've been with someone for years, routines can set in. Doing something special and unexpected, even something as simple as choosing your underwear with your partner in mind, sends a very clear signal. It says, I am still trying to impress you. You are still worth the effort. This can be incredibly arousing for both people involved. The scientific data from the national study backs this up in a fascinating way. While, as expected, 75% of women reported doing this for their partner, a significant number of men did too. 26% of men, over 1 in 4, also admitted to choosing their underwear specifically for their partner. This shows it's a far more common tool for connection than most people think. Here's a simple analogy to understand its power. Think of it like setting the table for a special dinner. You could just put the plates on the table and the food would taste the same. But when you add candles, use the nice plates and put on some music. The entire experience is elevated. It feels special. This is the same principle applied to intimacy. So, how can you apply this? It's incredibly simple. The next time you know you're going to be intimate with your partner, just make a conscious choice. Pick a pair of underwear that makes you feel confident or one you think your partner might appreciate. That's it. I had a patient, we can call him Michael, who felt his long-term marriage had lost its spark. I suggested this tiny change. He later told me his wife's reaction was profound. The synergy was immediate. It wasn't about the underwear itself, but the message it sent. That one small act of effort reopened a door to playfulness and anticipation that had been closed for years. All right, the sixth activity reported in the study is a direct result of the modern digital age we all live in. Activity number 6, sending or receiving nude or semi-nude photos. This practice is often referred to as sexting. Now, the critical and potentially life-altering mistake people make here is underestimating the permanence and lack of control that comes with sending a digital image. People operate under the assumption of trust, believing that a private image shared with a partner today will remain private forever. This can be a devastatingly naive assumption in the digital world. Why is this so risky? The reason is simple, yet absolute. Once you press send on a digital image, you have permanently lost control of it. Permanently. It no longer belongs to you. It can be saved, screenshotted, forwarded, or uploaded. It can exist on servers you don't even know about for years to come. Relationships end. Phones get lost or hacked. A moment of intimacy can turn into a lifetime of regret. And while this may sound alarmist, the data shows how widespread this practice has become, making the risk incredibly relevant. The national study found that 65% of men and 54% of women have either sent or received these kinds of photos. The sheer number of people engaging in this behavior means the potential for negative consequences is enormous. Here's the most direct analogy I can give you. Think of it like handing over the only key to your house to someone. While you trust them today, you have no guarantee of what might happen with that key tomorrow or who they might give a copy to. Sending a photo is handing over a key that can never be taken back. So, how do you navigate this with extreme caution? My medical advice is simple. Just don't do it. But if you do choose to engage in this, you must understand that key risk is never zero. At a minimum, never include your face or any other identifying features like tattoos or distinct backgrounds in the image. I had a patient whose life was turned upside down by a photo shared with an ex-partner. It caused immense professional and personal damage. There is no synergy here, only a warning. The momentary thrill is simply not worth the permanent risk to your reputation and your peace of mind. Let's now turn our attention to the seventh activity on the list, which highlights a very interesting distinction in how men and women often experience arousal. Activity number 7, reading erotic stories. This refers to engaging with sexually explicit narratives, whether in books or online. Now, a common mistake many men make is to completely overlook this form of stimulation, both for themselves and especially for their female partners. Because men are often more visually wired, they tend to project that preference onto their partners, assuming that visual content is the only or best path to arousal for everyone. So why is reading erotica a distinct and powerful activity? The answer lies in how the brain processes information and fantasy. For many people, and particularly for a large percentage of women, arousal is not just a visual or physical event. It is deeply intertwined with emotion, context, and imagination. Written stories allow the brain to create its own images, tailored perfectly to the individual's own desires, which can be a more immersive and powerful experience than passively watching a video. And there's fascinating scientific data to support this observation. The national study we have been discussing found that a significant 57% of people have read erotic stories. But more importantly, the data suggested that women often prefer reading these stories even more than they enjoy watching explicit videos. This provides strong evidence that a one-size-fits-all approach to arousal simply doesn't work for most couples. Here's an analogy that might help clarify this. Think of it like the difference between looking at a photograph of a beautiful landscape and reading a vivid travel journal about that same place. The photograph shows you exactly what it looks like. But the journal, it lets you imagine the smell of the air, the feel of the breeze, and the emotions of the journey. It engages more of your mind. So how can you explore this? A simple and effective way is to find a story you can read together with your partner. Take turns reading aloud. Discuss what you liked or didn't like about the scenarios. This is a safe, non-threatening way to open up communication about desires. A patient of mine and his wife found that this simple act created incredible synergy. He said it became a weekly ritual that rebuilt their emotional intimacy first, which in turn dramatically improved their physical connection. It wasn't about the stories themselves, but the shared experience of exploration. All right, the 8th activity on this list was one that, I have to admit, surprised me a little bit with its prevalence. Activity number 8, sex in a public place. This refers to engaging in intimate acts in a location where one could reasonably expect to be seen by others. Now, the most dangerous mistake a person can make here is confusing the psychological thrill of the act with its real-world consequences. People get caught up in the excitement and the fantasy of getting caught, and they completely fail to consider the severe and life-altering legal and social ramifications if they actually are caught. So why do people do this? The psychology is fairly straightforward. There's the practical side. Some people, especially younger individuals or those in crowded living situations, may simply lack private space. But for most, it's about the psychological thrill. The risk of being discovered releases a surge of adrenaline, a powerful hormone that can heighten arousal and make the experience feel more intense and memorable. And the scientific data from the national study shows this is not an entirely fringe activity. A rather shocking 43% of people, nearly half of the respondents, admitted to having had sex in a public place at least one time. This high number indicates that the perceived thrill is a powerful motivator for a large segment of the population. However, I must provide a very strong analogy here. Think of it like deciding to drive at 100 miles per hour down a residential street. For a few moments, it might feel exhilarating, a huge rush, but the potential consequences, a catastrophic accident, harming others, losing your license, even jail time, are so severe that no rational person would conclude the brief thrill is worth the lifelong risk. So, how does one approach this? As a physician and for your own safety, my advice must be to avoid this behavior entirely. From a legal standpoint, public sexual activity is a crime in nearly every jurisdiction. It can result in very serious legal consequences, including fines, probation, and in some jurisdictions, even the requirement to register as a sex offender. There is no patient story or synergy tip for this one. This is a simple risk versus reward calculation, and in this case, the potential reward of a momentary thrill is vastly outweighed by the potential for permanent, life-altering legal and social damage. It's a gamble that is simply not worth taking. We have now arrived at the 9th activity on the list, which was noted in the original study as one that might be shocking to some. Activity number 9, anal sex. This is a topic that requires a very clear and very clinical discussion. The most dangerous mistake couples make when exploring this activity is failing to prepare properly. They assume it is physiologically the same as vaginal intercourse and proceed without the necessary precautions, which can lead to significant pain, physical injury, and a high risk of bacterial infections. So, why can this be a source of pleasure, and why does it require such specific care? From a urological and anatomical standpoint, the anal region is rich with nerve endings. For men, this activity can provide direct stimulation to the prostate gland, which many men find extremely pleasurable. The key physiological difference, and this is critical, is that the anus and rectum do not self-lubricate like the vagina does. The tissue is also more delicate. The scientific data from the national study shows this is an activity a significant number of people have explored. 43% of men and 30% of women reported having tried anal sex at some point in their lives, making it far from a fringe activity. Here's the most important analogy I can offer. Think of it like trying to merge onto a busy highway. You don't just swerve into traffic at high speed. You must slow down, signal your intention, Use the on-ramp to match the speed of traffic and merge carefully and slowly. Rushing or forcing it will cause a serious accident. So how must one approach this safely? The instructions here are non-negotiable. First, proper lubrication is essential. You must use a generous amount of a high-quality lubricant. Second, communication is paramount. The receiving partner must be completely relaxed and comfortable, and you must proceed very, very slowly. Third, you must never, ever go from anal to vaginal contact without completely and thoroughly cleaning in between, as this is a primary cause of severe bacterial infections, like E. coli in the urinary tract. I had a couple who were curious but fearful. We discussed this exact safety protocol. By prioritizing communication and preparation, they were able to explore it without fear or injury. The synergy wasn't in the act itself, but in the level of trust they built by navigating a sensitive topic with so much care. And that brings us to the final activity in our top 10 list. Number 10. Activity number 10, spanking. This refers to the act of consensual spanking, either giving or receiving as part of a sexual experience. The most critical mistake people make when considering this is engaging in it impulsively, without clear and explicit prior communication. One partner might assume it would be a fun surprise, while the other might find it shocking, uncomfortable, or even traumatic. This is an activity where assumptions can be incredibly damaging. So why do some people find this pleasurable? The science here is fascinating and is rooted in neurobiology, the way our brains are wired. Neurological research has shown that the brain pathways that process mild pain signals and the pathways that process sexual pleasure are located very close to each other. In some cases, they actually overlap. The release of endorphins, which are the body's natural pain relievers, during mild, controlled pain can actually enhance feelings of pleasure and arousal. And this isn't just a niche interest. The national study we've been referencing found that about 30% of people, nearly 1 in 3, have at least tried spanking as part of their intimate lives. This shows that the connection between these sensations is a relatively common aspect of human sexuality. Here's a simple analogy to help understand this neurological link. Think of it like eating spicy food. On one level, the capsaicin in a hot pepper is causing a mild pain signal on your tongue. But your brain interprets this intense sensation and the resulting rush of endorphins as a thrilling and pleasurable experience. It's a similar neurological crossover event. So how does one approach this in the only acceptable and safe way? The rules here are absolute. You must have an explicit discussion and gain enthusiastic consent before ever engaging in this activity. You should start very gently to gauge your partner's comfort level. And most importantly, you must establish a clear, safe word or signal that can be used to stop the activity instantly. No questions asked. I once counseled a couple who wanted to explore this. We didn't focus on the act, but on the communication. They worked together to create their rules and safe words. He said the synergy was in the planning. The process of building that absolute trust was, in itself, an incredibly intimate act that strengthened their entire relationship. Now, beyond the top 10, the study also gave us a fascinating look into some bonus activities that are more common than you might think. We'll group these: bonus activities, role-playing, light kink, and group activities. This category includes things like role-playing fantasies, consensually tying up a partner, or even exploring group situations like threesomes. The biggest mistake people make here is thinking these interests are abnormal or something to be ashamed of. This fear often prevents couples from having healthy conversations about fantasies, which can lead to stagnation in a long-term relationship. So why are these activities appealing? Psychologically, they are powerful tools for novelty and fantasy exploration in a safe, controlled environment. They allow couples to step outside of their everyday personas and add a powerful layer of excitement and unpredictability to their intimate lives. It's a way of keeping the spark alive through shared adventure and creativity. And the scientific data shows that a surprising number of people have explored this territory. The national study reported that 22% of people, that's more than 1 in 5, have tried role-playing. About 20% have tried being tied up. More niche activities like threesomes were reported by 18% of men and 10% of women, while less than 8% of people had experienced larger group sex events. The best analogy for this is creative expression. Think of it like a couple deciding to take a painting class together. It's a new skill, a new way of interacting, a shared experience outside of their normal routine. Exploring these fantasies is a different form of shared creativity. So how do you approach this territory? The rules here are even more stringent than before. For any of these activities, you must have extensive, detailed communication beforehand. You must establish clear boundaries, rules, and safe words. This is non-negotiable. For group activities, discussions about STI testing and emotional expectations are absolutely critical. I've counseled many couples who have used these conversations to build extraordinary levels of trust. One couple found that planning a simple role-playing scenario created a synergy of excitement that lasted for weeks. The real benefit wasn't the activity itself, but the deep communication and trust it required, which strengthened their entire partnership. So as we bring this all together, it's clear that human intimacy is a rich and incredibly varied landscape. It's not a single, narrow path, but a wide-open field of possibilities. And the single most important takeaway from all of this data is that normal is a much, much broader landscape than you might have thought. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. So here is your simple 3-step prescription for the coming week. First, just reflect. Take a quiet moment to think about what connection and intimacy truly mean to you in this chapter of your life. No pressure. Second, pick one small, non-physical act of affection you can do for your partner. It could be making their coffee in the morning or leaving a simple note. Rebuild the foundation. Third, consider sharing one idea from this video with your partner, not as a demand, but simply as a conversation starter by saying, "I saw something interesting today." Now, I know exactly what some of you might be thinking. Audrey, we're too old for all this. Or, it's just too awkward to bring up. Remember the story of my patient, Susan? The immense relief she felt came not from doing anything different, but from simply knowing she wasn't alone. The conversation itself is the first and most powerful step. This isn't just about sex. This is about fighting back against that quiet idea that aging means fading away. It is about actively maintaining one of the most vital human connections you have, a connection that is absolutely fundamental to a vibrant, independent, and joyful life. So if you're committed to that idea, I invite you to become part of our community here. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our future science-backed guides. And just as importantly, go down to the comments right now and type 2 simple words. Day 1. This is your public commitment to yourself. Let's support each other on this journey. Thank you for investing your time and attention in me today. In our very next video, we're going to talk about the #1 nutrient that new studies show can dramatically support blood flow and energy after 60. You will not want to miss that one. Until then, be well and stay connected.